Have you ever felt like no matter what you do, it's never enough for your family? Maybe it's the grades they expect, the career they want you to choose, or even how you should live your personal life. Family expectations can be inspiring, but when the pressure becomes too heavy, it can crush our confidence, our dreams, and even our happiness. In this video, I'll share the 5 biggest ways family expectations create pressure and why it's so important to understand them if we want to find balance between what our family wants and what we truly desire. Academic pressure and achievements have become a defining struggle for many young people who grow up in environments where family expectations weigh heavily on their shoulders. From the earliest years of school, children are often told that their performance is not just a reflection of their own abilities, but a measure of family honor, social standing, and even future success. For some, the first report card is less about learning and more about proving worth. Parents, sometimes driven by love and sometimes by fear of insecurity, push their children to excel academically, believing that grades are the single most reliable path to stability and respect in society. The problem arises when these expectations grow into a rigid framework where a child's value is judged solely by numbers, test results, or admissions letters from prestigious institutions. This relentless push for excellence can create both external and internal pressure. Externally, the child feels watched, evaluated, and compared not only with peers at school, but often with siblings, cousins, or even children of family friends. Dinner table conversations may shift toward academic rankings or standardized tests. Scores and phrases like "why can't you be more like" become piercing reminders that achievement is never quite enough. Internally, young people internalize these voices until they become their own harshest critics, replaying thoughts of inadequacy or shame whenever they fall short of expectations. Over time, this cycle can erode confidence and distort their relationship with learning itself. Rather than seeing education as an opportunity to grow, many begin to associate it with fear and anxiety. They study not out of curiosity, but to avoid punishment or disappointment. Tests become sources of dread and mistakes natural. Parts of the learning process are seen as evidence of weakness. The joy of discovery fades, replaced by the relentless grind of memorization and performance. Students under constant academic pressure often struggle with burnout at an age when they should be exploring passions and building resilience. The pursuit of excellence, once meant to empower them, instead becomes a source of emotional and psychological fatigue. The cultural backdrop intensifies this struggle. In many societies, education is viewed as the great equalizer, the ticket out of poverty, or the guarantee of respectability. Parents who may have faced hardship often channel their dreams into their children, hoping they will live better lives. While the intention is rooted in love, the execution can feel suffocating. A child is no longer free to define success for themselves. It has already been scripted: high grades, admission to top universities, and entry into stable, prestigious professions. Anything outside that script feels like failure, regardless of the child's unique talents or aspirations. The consequences of this pressure reach beyond the classroom. High levels of stress manifest in physical ways: sleep problems, headaches, fatigue, and even more serious health issues like anxiety disorders or depression. For many young people, school becomes synonymous with survival rather than growth. They may isolate themselves from peers, fearing that socializing takes away precious study time. Others may rebel silently, procrastinating or disengaging entirely, which only fuels more conflict with parents who cannot understand why their child is wasting potential. The gap between parental expectation and student reality widens, straining family relationships and leaving young people feeling misunderstood and alone. Academic pressure also shapes identity. When success is defined exclusively by grades, young people begin to tie their self-worth to external validation. A good child is one who brings home straight A's, while a single low grade may trigger feelings of shame or failure. This fragile sense of identity becomes dangerous because it is contingent on circumstances beyond one's full control. A difficult exam, a strict teacher, or a challenging subject can suddenly unravel years of confidence. Worse still, when students eventually step into the real world, where achievements are not always linear or measurable. They may feel lost, unprepared to define success on their own terms. For some, the pressure produces short-term results, good grades, scholarships, or prestigious opportunities, but the long-term costs can outweigh these achievements. Burnout, perfectionism, and imposter syndrome often follow, making it difficult to enjoy or even sustain success. These young adults may constantly feel like they are performing for an invisible audience, fearing that if they stumble, they will lose both respect and love. The tragedy lies in how many carry these wounds silently, smiling at graduation ceremonies while battling feelings of emptiness or exhaustion inside. Breaking this cycle requires a shift in perspective. Families need to recognize that while education is important, it is not the only measure of intelligence, potential, or success. Emotional well-being, creativity, resilience, and interpersonal skills are equally critical in shaping a fulfilling life. Parents who encourage curiosity rather than perfection often raise children who are more adaptive, motivated, and confident in pursuing their passions. It takes courage to break from tradition and redefine success, but it also creates healthier dynamics where love is not conditional on performance. On the part of young people, building resilience against academic pressure begins with self-awareness. Recognizing that grades are not the sole indicator of worth allows them to approach learning with curiosity rather than fear. Developing time management and stress coping strategies such as mindfulness, exercise, or creative outlets can also buffer against burnout. Equally important is learning to communicate openly with family members about struggles, boundaries, and aspirations. While these conversations are not always easy, they are essential in reshaping expectations into something more supportive and realistic. Educators and society at large also have roles to play. Schools that emphasize holistic education, valuing not just test scores but also emotional intelligence, creativity, and collaboration, help students develop well-rounded identities. Media and community narratives that celebrate diverse forms of success can challenge the narrow definitions that fuel pressure in the first place. When young people see role models who thrive outside traditional pathways, they gain permission to imagine alternative futures for themselves. Ultimately, the story of academic pressure is one of intention versus impact. Families, in their desire to secure a better life for their children, may unintentionally create environments of fear rather than growth. But change is possible when both parents and children acknowledge the difference between supportive guidance and overwhelming pressure. Education should be a ladder to opportunity, not a chain of obligation. Achievements should be celebrated, yes, but so should effort, curiosity, and the courage to explore one's own path. As society evolves, so too must our understanding of success. In a world where industries shift rapidly and creativity is increasingly valuable, rigid academic achievements alone cannot guarantee fulfillment. Young people deserve the freedom to define their journeys, supported by families who trust them to find their way. Releasing the grip of academic pressure does not mean abandoning ambition. It means balancing ambition with humanity, ensuring that success is measured not just in grades but in joy, resilience, and the ability to live authentically. Career choices represent another significant dimension where family expectations often clash with personal aspirations. Many young people find themselves caught in a struggle between what they want for their own future and what their families believe is the right or respectable path. Parents, often shaped by cultural values or their own lived experiences, may view certain professions such as medicine, law, or engineering as symbols of stability, security, and social Prestige. These careers are seen as safe investments, offering predictable financial rewards and status within the community. From their perspective, encouraging or insisting that their child pursue one of these paths is an act of love and protection for the young person. However, this insistence can feel like a form of suffocation. Interests in fields such as the arts, social sciences, or even newer domains like digital entrepreneurship or gaming may be dismissed as frivolous or unsustainable. A young aspiring artist might hear phrases like, "You can paint in your free time, but you need a real job," while a teenager passionate about coding for video games may be told that only serious software engineering counts as respectable work. This discrediting of passions not only creates tension, but also sends an implicit message that one's natural talents or desires are less valuable than the social image their career projects. The conflict often escalates during transitional periods such as choosing a university major or applying for internships. Families may push for applications to medical schools or business programs, while the young person longs to apply to film academies, design schools, or community projects. This tug-of-war leaves many feeling torn between loyalty to their family and authenticity to themselves. For those who choose to obey, resentment can build over time. They may find themselves excelling in their career but secretly unhappy, wondering about the life they never allowed themselves to pursue. For those who rebel, guilt can weigh heavily, creating rifts in family relationships that may last for years. One of the most damaging consequences of this dynamic is the erosion of self-trust. When family expectations override personal desires, young people may begin to question whether they are capable of making good decisions for themselves. They may internalize the belief that only their parents or elders know what is truly best. This dependency stunts the development of autonomy, a critical skill for adulthood. Conversely, others may swing to the opposite extreme, rejecting any parental advice simply to assert independence, even when some guidance could be beneficial. Both extremes point to the same wound, a fractured sense of self-direction caused by the pressure to conform. The pressure around career choices also reveals broader cultural narratives. In many societies, prestige is ranked hierarchically, doctors and lawyers at the top, artists and tradespeople at the bottom. Yet, paradoxically, these same societies thrive on the contributions of all professions. Musicians shape culture, entrepreneurs fuel innovation, teachers nurture future generations, and tradespeople keep essential systems running. Still, because of societal bias, young people often feel their worth is judged not by how fulfilled or competent they are, but by the prestige of their job title. This narrow lens dismisses the reality that fulfillment and contribution come in countless forms, not just a handful of professions deemed acceptable. The emotional toll of being forced into unwanted careers is profound. Studies show that individuals who work in fields misaligned with their interests are more prone to burnout, stress, and disengagement. Their productivity may decline because they lack intrinsic motivation. Over time, dissatisfaction with career choices can bleed into other areas of life: relationships, self-esteem, and even physical health. A young person who once had vibrant energy may find themselves waking up each day dreading the hours ahead, living a life that looks successful on the outside but feels hollow on the inside. On the other hand, when families support diverse career paths, the results can be transformative. Young people who pursue careers aligned with their passions often display greater creativity, resilience, and problem-solving skills. They may face uncertainties or financial instability at first, but their intrinsic motivation fuels persistence. Through challenges, their fulfillment also strengthens relationships because they no longer carry the invisible resentment of unmet dreams. Families who take the risk of trusting their children often discover that success can manifest in unexpected ways that may not fit traditional molds but ultimately lead to joy and sustainability. It is important to recognize that family concerns are not without merit. parents worrying because the world is uncertain and financial instability is real. Their desire for their children to be secure comes from genuine care, but the path to stability today is far more complex than it was for earlier generations. New industries are emerging, technology is reshaping the job market, and creativity is more marketable than ever before. Careers that once seemed unstable, like digital content creation or app development, are now among the fastest-growing sectors. By clinging to outdated definitions of success, families risk holding their children back from opportunities uniquely suited for the modern era. Bridging this gap requires dialogue and compromise. Young people need the courage to articulate their passions clearly, showing their families how their chosen paths can be viable. They can demonstrate seriousness by developing plans, setting goals, and researching practical steps to turn their dreams into sustainable careers. Parents, in turn, must learn to listen with openness, separating their fears from their children's potential. When families shift from a model of control to one of support, the pressure around career choices transforms into encouragement, helping young people build both resilience and responsibility. Ultimately, career choices should be about alignment, not compliance. A young person whose career reflects their authentic self is more likely to contribute meaningfully to society, to build strong relationships, and to sustain long-term happiness. While family expectations may shape values, they should not dictate destinies. Each individual deserves the chance to define what success means for them and to walk a path that is both fulfilling and realistic. A family's role, at its best, is not to script the story, but to provide the foundation upon which their children can write their own. Marriage and relationships often become battlegrounds for family expectations, especially in cultures where traditions and collective values remain deeply rooted. For many young people, the idea of love and partnership is not just a personal decision, but a family matter shaped by cultural norms, religious beliefs, and community standards. Families may carry strong opinions about who their child should marry, when they should marry, and even how the relationship should function. While these expectations are often fueled by love, protection, or a desire to preserve tradition, they can place immense pressure on young individuals who may already be struggling to find their own sense of identity and belonging. In many households, the topic of marriage arises long before young adults are emotionally or financially prepared for it. Some families see marriage as a milestone that validates maturity or stability. For young women in particular, pressure to marry by a certain age can be intense, with constant reminders that time is running out. Young men, too, face expectations, often pressured to establish themselves financially before seeking a partner, regardless of whether they feel ready. These timelines rarely take into account the unique pace of individual growth or the changing social dynamics of modern life, where people are marrying later or choosing alternative paths altogether. Beyond timing, family expectations often extend into the choice of partner. Some parents expect their children to marry within the same culture, religion, or socioeconomic class. Interracial or interfaith relationships, while increasingly common in globalized societies, may still face resistance. A young person who falls in love outside of these boundaries may experience not only disapproval but also threats of estrangement or emotional manipulation. The subtle but powerful question, "What will people say?" often underlies these objections, revealing that family concerns are as much about societal reputation as they are about the child's happiness. This pressure can create profound internal conflict. On one hand, young people want to honor their family, especially if they grew up in cultures where filial piety or loyalty to parents is highly valued. On the other hand, they long for autonomy in one of life's most intimate and meaningful choices. Choosing a partner is not simply about meeting expectations. It is about finding compatibility, trust, and love when these personal needs clash. With family demands, the individual can feel trapped between two worlds, one defined by tradition, the other by personal fulfillment. The emotional toll is significant. Many who cave to family pressure and marry someone chosen for them may later experience dissatisfaction or regret. They may feel emotionally disconnected from their spouse, leading to strained relationships or, in some cases, divorce. Others who resist family expectations may suffer guilt, fearing they have disappointed their parents or tarnished the family's honor. These conflicting emotions can weigh heavily, affecting not only the individual's mental health but also their long-term ability to form healthy, balanced partnerships. Another layer of pressure comes from how relationships are expected to function after marriage. In some families, expectations extend into how a couple should live, raise children, or balance gender roles. Young couples may find themselves under scrutiny within laws expecting compliance with traditional customs or household arrangements. For women, this often means pressure to prioritize family over career, while men may feel burdened by the expectation of being the sole financial provider. Even when both partners want to create a more egalitarian dynamic, family expectations can interfere, sowing tension and conflict. Social media and globalization further complicate these dynamics. Young people are exposed to diverse models of partnerships based on equality, love marriages rather than arranged ones, or even lifestyles that reject traditional marriage altogether. This exposure often clashes with the more conservative ideals their families uphold. As a result, many feel torn between the world they see online and the reality of their home environment. The generational gap widens, with parents fearing that traditions will be lost and children longing for the freedom to redefine what love and family mean to them. Yet, it is important to acknowledge that not all family involvement in marriage is negative. In some cases, parental guidance helps young people avoid unhealthy relationships or provides valuable wisdom drawn from lived experience. The challenge lies in distinguishing between guidance and control. When families offer support, while respecting autonomy, their involvement can strengthen relationships rather than undermine them. The problem emerges when expectations become rigid, leaving no room for the child's voice or individuality. To navigate this pressure, open communication becomes essential. Young people must learn to articulate their desires respectfully yet firmly, expressing why certain choices matter to them. At the same time, families must be willing to listen, recognizing that their children live in a different social context than the one they grew up in. Compromise does not mean abandoning tradition entirely. It can mean finding ways to integrate values while still honoring personal freedom. For example, a family might maintain cultural rituals in wedding ceremonies while allowing the couple to choose their own partner. Societal narratives also need to evolve. Media, education, and community leaders can play a role in redefining marriage and relationships as personal decisions rather than communal obligations. Highlighting diverse models of successful partnerships can help reduce stigma around choices that fall outside traditional expectations. When society normalizes autonomy in relationships, families may feel less pressure to conform to outdated standards. Ultimately, marriage and relationships should be about love, compatibility, and shared vision, not about preserving appearances or satisfying community gossip. Young people deserve the right to choose partners who align with their values and personalities, free from coercion or guilt. Families, in turn, must recognize that true honor lies not in controlling outcomes but in supporting authentic happiness. When love is allowed to flourish without the burden of undue expectations, it strengthens not only the couple but the family as a whole. Financial responsibilities often become a heavy weight when shaped by family expectations, especially for young people stepping into adulthood. In many cultures, there is a strong belief that once a child begins earning, they must give back to the family, not just emotionally, but financially. This sense of duty is rooted in love and gratitude, but it can also turn into a burden that stifles independence and personal growth. Young adults may feel as if they are living not only for themselves but also for the extended household, constantly balancing their own needs against those of parents, siblings, or even distant relatives. For many, the expectation begins the moment they secure their first job. Instead of celebrating their achievement as a step toward personal freedom, families may immediately place demands on their income. Some are asked to cover household bills, contribute to siblings' education, or repay debts the family has accumulated. While contributing to one's family is an admirable act of support, the expectation can become suffocating when it leaves little room for the individual to save, invest, or pursue their own goals. A young person who dreams of starting a business, traveling, or pursuing further education may feel trapped, forced to prioritize family obligations over personal aspirations. The psychological impact of these responsibilities is profound. On one hand, many young people internalize the duty as a form of repayment for years of care and sacrifice. They want to show appreciation, to prove themselves worthy of the sacrifices their parents made. On the other hand, constant financial pressure can generate resentment, particularly if demands feel excessive or unending. This internal conflict, wanting to give but also needing to grow, creates guilt no matter what choice is made. If they give too much, they feel deprived of their own independence. If they hold back, they fear being labeled ungrateful or selfish. This struggle is further complicated by the economic realities of modern life. In many parts of the world, wages have stagnated while the cost of living continues to rise. Young adults often enter the workforce with student debt, high housing costs, and limited job security. Yet, despite these challenges, families may still expect financial contributions as those circumstances have not changed. For some, this leads to taking on multiple jobs, working excessive hours, or delaying major milestones such as buying a home, getting married, or starting a family of their own. The cycle of financial dependency becomes difficult to break as young adults are pulled between supporting their parents and preparing for their own futures. Cultural narratives add another layer of complexity. In collectivist societies, financial support of one's family is not just encouraged, it is considered a moral obligation. Children are expected to prioritize family needs above their own, sometimes even above their spouse or children once they marry. In contrast, more individualistic cultures may view financial independence as a sign of maturity, encouraging young adults to separate their finances from their parents as quickly as possible. Young people caught between these cultural frameworks, such as immigrants balancing traditional family values with new societal norms, may feel torn, unsure of where their true responsibilities lie. The strain is not only financial but also emotional. Constantly being asked for money can erode relationships, turning family bonds into transactional exchanges. Some young people may avoid family gatherings out of fear of new demands, while others may feel unappreciated when their contributions are taken for granted. At its worst, this dynamic can lead to financial abuse, where families exploit the earning member without regard for their well-being. What was meant to be an act of love and support transforms into a cycle of obligation that diminishes trust and closeness. Yet, it is important to recognize that financial responsibility, when approached with balance, can also be a source of pride and connection. Contributing to family expenses can strengthen bonds, provide security for aging parents, and create a sense of shared achievement. The challenge lies in finding a healthy balance where giving does not come at the expense of one's own growth, and where families appreciate contributions without treating them as entitlements. Breaking this cycle requires open dialogue. Young people need to set boundaries, communicating honestly about what they can and cannot afford. This may involve creating budgets, prioritizing essential needs, and explaining long-term goals to their families. For example, a young adult saving for further education or a down payment on a home might agree to contribute a smaller amount to the family in the short term while ensuring greater stability in the future. Families, in turn, need to recognize that their children's independence is not abandonment but progress, that by supporting their children's growth, they are securing stronger, more sustainable support in the long run. Society also has a role to play. Governments and communities can ease the burden by providing better social support systems for elderly care, education, and healthcare services that are often the reason families lean so heavily on their younger members in the first place. Employers can also help by offering financial literacy programs, mentorship, or benefits that allow young workers to balance their obligations more effectively. When financial responsibility is shared more broadly, the pressure on individuals becomes less overwhelming. Ultimately, financial responsibility shaped by family expectations is about balance. Supporting loved ones is a noble act, but it should not come at the cost of sacrificing one's future or well-being. True love within families should mean allowing young people the space to grow, invest in themselves, and build stability, not binding them to endless cycles of obligation. When approached with understanding and fairness, financial contributions can become acts of empowerment rather than chains of pressure, strengthening both individual independence and family unity. Family expectations can feel invisible yet profoundly heavy, like a constant weight pressing on your shoulders. These expectations are often well-intentioned. Parents and family members want the best for you, envisioning a future they believe is secure and successful. However, when these expectations become rigid or unrealistic, they can start to erode mental and emotional well-being. The psychological impact manifests in multiple ways, affecting self-esteem, motivation, emotional health, and even relationships within the family. One of the most immediate effects of high family expectations is stress. When young adults or adolescents feel that every decision is being scrutinized or measured against an ideal standard, it creates a persistent sense of pressure. Imagine preparing for an exam, a job interview, or even making a life decision, and every outcome is tied not only to personal goals but to familial approval. This external pressure can transform everyday choices into sources of anxiety. Individuals may begin to second-guess themselves constantly, fearing that a misstep will result in disappointment or criticism. Over time, this chronic stress can disrupt sleep, reduce focus, and even impair decision-making, creating a cycle where the stress itself hinders performance, which in turn leads to more stress. Closely linked to stress is low self-esteem. When achievements are constantly compared to a family's high standards, or when accomplishments are overlooked because they are not what was expected, individuals may start internalizing a sense of inadequacy. For example, a student may work hard to achieve good grades but still hear phrases like, "You could have done better," or "Is this really what I hoped for?" Even subtle comments can accumulate into a pervasive belief that one's efforts are never sufficient. Over time, low self-esteem can influence multiple areas of life, from academic performance to social interactions and personal relationships. Individuals may become reluctant to take risks, fearing failure or criticism, which can further limit personal growth. Another common psychological effect is feelings of failure or guilt. When family expectations are rigid or unrealistic, failing to meet them can lead to intense self-blame. The person may feel they are letting down not just themselves but their entire family. This can be especially pronounced in cultures or households where collective identity and family reputation are highly valued. Young adults may sacrifice their own desires or interests, choosing paths that align with family expectations even when it causes personal dissatisfaction. When these efforts do not yield the desired approval or success, feelings of failure can deepen, creating frustration, resentment, and emotional exhaustion. Emotional distance from family often arises as a coping mechanism. When the pressure becomes overwhelming, some individuals may withdraw emotionally to protect themselves. This distance is not necessarily a reflection of a lack of love or respect for the family. Rather, it is a way to create personal space and maintain mental stability. However, this emotional separation can lead to feelings of isolation, misunderstanding, and conflict. Families may perceive the withdrawal as ingratitude or rebellion, further complicating relationships. For the individual, the challenge lies in balancing the need for personal autonomy with the desire to maintain close family bonds. Despite these challenges, there are practical coping strategies that can significantly reduce the psychological burden of family expectations. One of the most effective approaches is open communication. Honest conversations with family members about one's goals, fears, and boundaries can clarify misunderstandings and foster mutual respect. For instance, explaining why a certain career path or life choice is meaningful can help family members see things from the individual's perspective. While these discussions may initially feel uncomfortable or even confrontational, they can pave the way for more supportive and understanding relationships. Another key strategy is setting boundaries. Boundaries are not about rejecting family, guidance, or love. They are about protecting one's mental health and autonomy. This might involve politely declining participation in certain family expectations, negotiating timelines, or establishing limits on unsolicited advice. Clear boundaries empower individuals to make decisions that reflect their authentic selves while maintaining respectful interactions with family members. Learning to set boundaries often requires practice and confidence, but it is crucial for sustaining emotional well-being. Balancing personal desires with family expectations is a nuanced strategy that can prevent internal conflict. Rather than completely rejecting family input or blindly following expectations, individuals can seek compromises that honor both perspectives. For example, a young adult might pursue a career that aligns with personal passion while also considering practical factors that satisfy family concerns, such as stability or growth potential. Finding this middle ground requires self-awareness, negotiation skills, and the ability to prioritize values without losing sight of personal goals. Over time, balancing these interests can reduce resentment and foster a sense of agency, showing family members that the individual is capable of responsible decision-making. In addition to these interpersonal strategies, self-care and mental health practices play a crucial role in coping. Stress-reducing activities such as mindfulness meditation, journaling, physical exercise, and creative outlets help manage anxiety and reinforce self-confidence. Seeking support from peers, mentors, or mental health professionals can also provide perspective and guidance. Therapy, in particular, offers a safe space to explore feelings of pressure, develop coping mechanisms, and build resilience. Engaging in self-care is not a sign of weakness. Rather, it is an essential step in maintaining mental and emotional stability in the face of external pressures. Importantly, individuals must reframe the concept of success. Family expectations often define success in narrow or conventional terms, such as high grades, prestigious careers, or early marriage. Redefining success in a way that encompasses personal growth, fulfillment, and well-being can reduce internal conflict. By acknowledging achievements in personal development, creativity, relationships, or community contributions, individuals can cultivate a sense of accomplishment that is independent of familial benchmarks. This reframing encourages self-compassion and resilience, allowing one to pursue a meaningful life without being paralyzed by external pressures. Lastly, it is essential to recognize and accept limits. While some family expectations can be negotiated or addressed through communication, others may be deeply rooted in cultural or generational values. Understanding that one cannot control every perception or belief in the family can release unnecessary guilt or frustration. Acceptance does not mean resignation. It means acknowledging reality and focusing energy on areas where personal growth and agency are possible. This mindset helps reduce emotional exhaustion and fosters a healthier relationship with oneself and the family. In conclusion, the psychological impact of family expectations is profound, affecting stress levels, self-esteem, feelings of failure, And family dynamics, however, by implementing strategies such as open communication, boundary setting, balancing personal desires, practicing self-care, redefining success, and recognizing limits, individuals can significantly reduce the emotional burden. These strategies empower young adults to maintain mental health, cultivate personal autonomy, and build fulfilling relationships with family members. Ultimately, managing family expectations is not about rejecting familial love or guidance, but about creating a sustainable path where personal aspirations and family values can coexist harmoniously. And that wraps up our deep dive into the 5 main points about family expectations pressure. From academics and career choices to lifestyle, marriage, and coping strategies, we've explored how these pressures affect our lives and, most importantly, how we can navigate them. Remember, your life is yours to shape, and while family guidance is valuable, setting your own boundaries and following your passions is what truly matters. If you found this video helpful, insightful, or just relatable, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss more tips on navigating life's challenges and building the future you want. Share your thoughts in the comments. What's the biggest expectation you've felt from your family, and how did you handle it? I'd love to hear your story.